Okay, so welcome. We are so excited to be here at the Beaches Chapel, the historic chapel that we have here in Jacksonville Beach, and we have Chris Hoffman, who is the executive director, as well as the mayor of Jacksonville Beach, that's hosting us tonight.
And technical support.
And technical support.
Yeah, Jane of all trades.
Technical support. It's always wonderful to be here. It's such a privilege, and we really appreciate being able to be in this space. So thank you, Chris. I'm Maria Mark. I'm the president of Beaches Watch, and hosting tonight's meeting. We've got a very exciting program. We'd love to hear about our friends under the sea and find out what's going on with them. So we have our sharks, sea turtles, and OCEARCH to learn about what's going on with them. So we'll hear from Dr. Bryan Franks, who's the executive director of the Marine Science Institute, and Lucas Meers, who's the director of the JU Sea Turtle Program. So before we get started with that program, we do want to let you know that we are a membership organization, so we do depend on our members to support us as well as donations. Our memberships are $5 for students, $15 for individual, and $20 for family. It goes from January to December, and right now we are in our early bird renewal. Let's see. Oh, hold on.
I'll just click the arrow button.
Technical.
I can do it if you need me to, but ideally that would work.
Are you pointing it at the computer?
Yeah, bring it over here.
So I'm new at.
Look, it worked.
Yay!
Okay.
We'll just give you the signal when it's time to sit.
Our meetings are videotaped, so please make sure you share that with your neighbors and friends who are not able to attend tonight. But we are now in our early bird membership drive, so anyone who renews between now and the end of the year will be put in our raffle to get a prize probably in April when we do our drawing. So either you can renew your membership tonight or join us for the first time or make a donation. Our ladies in the back would be happy to take your money in any form except crypto. No crypto. Okay, and we always like to recognize our elected officials. Their support is really outstanding for our organization. And again, we have Chris Hoffman, who's the mayor of Jacksonville Beach, and our technical advisor. We have Sandy Golding, who is also City Council, Jacksonville Beach. Candace Kelly, City Commissioner, Atlantic Beach. Corey Byland, Mayor of Neptune Beach. Corey, she's in the back. The offering plate will come to you first. We have Greg Sutton, Jacksonville Beach City Council. Greg, thank you for coming. Anyone else we may not have signed in needs recognition? Okay, well thank you for coming. Right now we are in the process of selecting our Give Back Award for this year, so nominations are still open until November 7th. So you can go online, the nominations are online. We'd love for you to nominate your favorite nonprofit who you feel like is deserving, that's really added to the quality of life for our residents here in Jacksonville and at the beaches. This is a major time of need for a lot of people, so please take a look at it, and if they're a 501c3 organization and you feel like they deserve recognition and a Give Back Award, we urge you to nominate them. Let's see, what else? Okay. We do have some holidays coming up. City offices will be closed on Tuesday, November the 11th, which is for Veterans Day. Thank you to all our veterans who have served and continue to serve us. Thursday, November 27th, and Friday, November 28th, Thanksgiving. Gosh, can you believe we're in Thanksgiving? Oh my goodness. So now's really the time to give, right? Okay. And December is when we do our award to the Give Back donation, and that will be presented, it will be back at the Beaches Library. They are in the process of finally getting a new HVAC system, which has been sorely needed. So we will be there to do that, and we'll have our last year's recipient as well as our 2025 recipient. So please put that on your calendar, because it really does show what our organizations do for us here at the beach and do for the people who really need services. So we like to recognize them.
Oh, it did work. I was right.
It's picky.
I pointed right there to the light. So we always just like to find out kind of how you've heard about our meetings tonight. So those who have read about it, Beaches Leader, I know Beaches Leader is online now, so maybe not as quite as prevalent as it used to be, but Beaches Leader, our announcement, there's one. Okay, that's good. Facebook, our Facebook posts. Good.
I saw that.
Yay, yay. Our newsletter. We send out our newsletter pretty regularly. Great. You actually read our newsletters. Great. Good, Sandy. Jacksonville Today, they are an email news broadcast that they do announce all the local meetings from here through Clay County and I think St. John's. Let's see what else. Our Beaches Watch, our website. Thank you, Kevin. And just by word of mouth. Talk to your neighbors. Thank you. Talk to your friends. That's
Sandy.
good. All right. We are talking to each other. That's excellent. That's even better. Okay. So, without further ado, we will start with our presentation. As I said, this is about sharks, sea turtles, and OCEARCH, oh my. As you know, OCEARCH is housed in Mayport Village, so we're very excited to have them there. And we are going to learn about our neighbors of the sea, and we will start with Dr. Franks. Thank you.
First off, thank you. As a professor, I usually walk around the room, but I'll do my best to stand here behind the podium so the microphone picks up my voice. First off, thank you for having us, both myself and Lucas. As was mentioned, my name is Bryan Franks. I am a professor at Jacksonville University, and I also serve as the executive director of the Marine Science Research Institute there. My background is I am a shark biologist. So actually, when JU entered into a partnership with OCEARCH back in 2017, they were looking for a professor who studied sharks. That was the job I applied for, ended up getting. So I've been at JU since 2017. First as a professor, and then many of you know Dr. Quentin White. Dr. White, who really is the institution in and of himself. He retired from JU a couple years ago. And I served in the interim role of executive director for about a year, and then I've been the executive director for about a year and a half now. As I say to everybody, if you know Quint, I cannot fill his shoes. His shoes were quite big, literally and figuratively, but we do the best we can, and I think we are pushing forward and expanding into new areas, including bringing Lucas on board just this year to kind of expand some of our research that we do. So I'll talk briefly about the Marine Science Research Institute and then kind of dive into the sharks. Now I do promise I know how to use these.
I'll be your flip.
There we go. Oh. Okay, so you don't need to necessarily read all these words. I just want to show you where the MSRI, as we call it, and it's not the best acronym, because if you kind of just say it as one word, it spells out misery, which is not what we want, the exact opposite of that. But the MSRI does sit on the banks of the St. Johns River, if you've ever been to JU's campus. JU is a small private institution, about 4,200 students. The Marine Science undergraduate program has actually been in existence for about 50 years. So we have had a marine science program at JU since the 1970s. The graduate program is a little bit newer. So Dr. White started the MSRI back in 2010, and And around that time is when we started our graduate program. We have research, education, and outreach as kind of the three pillars of the Institute. I'm mostly going to be talking about research activities that we do at the Institute, but really our goal is threefold. One, to provide educational opportunities for students of JU, as well as students around the community. So we do a lot of summer activities with local students from around Duval County. Fostering research opportunities for faculty as well as students. And then lastly, outreach. So we try to be out into the community. But I'm going to talk a fair bit now about some of our research activities. We do try to have a broad focus, even though we're a small school. So we have a strong curriculum in which active experiential learning, getting your hands on whatever it is you're studying, is critically important. And we are able to do that in spades, really, because ultimately of the size of our institution. You know, when I was a graduate student and I was a teaching assistant to some classes, I might be a teaching assistant to a class of 400. And when you have a class of 400 students, you really are limited in terms of the teaching activities that you can do. In a class of 15 or 20, it opens up a lot more possibilities. And I honestly never really wanted to be at a larger institution because of that. I appreciate those more kind of intimate, hands-on learning experiences that I can have with students. And students get to know me on a first-name basis, and I get to know them on a first-name basis. As I mentioned, we try to cover the gamut in terms of research that we do. So we have faculty and students doing everything from marine geology to plankton in the St. Johns River, to coral reefs down in the Florida Keys, to of course what we call the charismatic megafauna, marine mammals, sharks and rays, and our sea turtles. So these are just some photos of the MSRI. I will say one thing that Quint did very well was design the MSRI to pack a lot of punch in a small footprint. He made the building flexible. What that means is we just had an event there that Lucas and I just came from where we had about 60 people in kind of a little cocktail reception type of venue. And some of that meeting was literally in a classroom that was used earlier today as a classroom. But we're able to kind of rearrange things and utilize the building for teaching, research, and outreach. Next slide. Just some more photos. We do have a lot of tanks and tank systems in the building that students maintain. So all of the students take care of all of the tanks in our facility, and it really provides another learning experience for them. We do have a fleet of vessels of our own. I don't know if the pointer works. Go back real quick. So this is our largest vessel here. This is a 48-foot pontoon boat. This boat stays on the river. But we can take entire classes out on that vessel. So it provides a really nice, we call it the floating classroom. It has power on board for microscopes. It has an A-frame for pulling trawls. It has a little table that we can flood with water and put critters in those tables so students can identify them or do whatever they might need. Then we have a fleet of smaller boats that we use for a lot of our research activities. Some of those are on trailers that we tow around the area, and some of them are kept at local marinas up and down the river. As I mentioned, I'll briefly talk about curriculum. We have an undergraduate program that has about 160 undergraduate students in it, and then we have 3 graduate programs that total up to about 60 students. So a little over 200 students doesn't sound like a lot, but for a school the size of JU, it is significant. And our programs do continue to grow year after year. To give you an example, when I started at JU 8.5 years ago, our graduate program was about 20 students. So it's tripled in size just in the past 8+ years. As I mentioned, faculty-student research is very important. And we study everything from marine geology to plankton to coral reefs to all of these charismatic megafauna. Because ultimately, in order to be a true marine scientist, you need to get your feet wet and your hands dirty. And we try to do that as much as possible. Our location on the river helps us do that. The boats that we have help us do that. The professors that we have help us do that. And really, this is what the students want. They want to not just sit in a classroom and listen to me talk, they want to get out and see it for themselves. So we try to get the students out as much as possible from literally the first week that they step foot on campus. That active experiential learning is critical. So these are just some photos of some students doing work around the MSRI and then around some of our local water bodies. This is down in the Florida Keys where students were working on a coral restoration project. This is actually in the Bahamas because we do some study abroad as well. Really, the two big areas we've been going to more recently are the Bahamas and then Italy, because we have an agreement with an institute over in the Mediterranean. So students can go, and Lucas actually went this past summer, for a few weeks and take a couple classes in Italy. This photo here is one of the school groups that we offer field trips to in the summertime. This is actually funded through Kids Hope Alliance. So they provide funding for us to offer field trip opportunities for students from around Duval County, mostly from traditionally underserved and underrepresented groups. And I'm actually really proud of this because we started this a few years ago, and we've been able to bring over 2,000 students to the MSRI in the summers for a day's marine science activities. We always take them out on the boat, and I can't count the number of times. One of the questions is, how many of y'all have been out on the river? And very few hands go up. You know, there's many students that live here in our communities that live a stone's throw away from the St. John's or from a water body, and they've never spent time on the water because they don't have that opportunity. So being able to provide that opportunity is very worthwhile. I'm going to go to the next one. Again, student-driven research, and whether that's research on dolphins or sharks with OCEARCH or corals. This is actually a project that we're working on locally here with sharks, as well as this one here. It's all about students driving the research. Next slide. So now I'm going to switch to my work. And what I would consider sharks, not just with OCEARCH, but sharks right here in our backyard. Next slide. So I'm briefly, this is very briefly, going to teach you a little bit about sharks. There's about 1,300 species of shark skates and rays. Those as a group are known as elasmobranchs. It might seem like a lot, but it's truly not. To give you an example, when we say 1,300 species of shark skates and rays, there's only about 500 to 600 that are sharks. The rest of those are skates and rays. So only about 500 to 600 species of sharks. To give you an example, bony fish, so everything that is not a shark, skate, ray, or some of the weird ones like chimeras, there are roughly 40 to 45,000 species of bony fish on the planet today. So sharks are actually, at least in terms of numbers of species, very, very few compared to the numbers of bony fish. Now, historically on our planet, it wasn't always that way. There was a period of time in our geologic history where sharks were the most speciose things in the ocean. But during one of the major extinction events, they lost a lot of numbers of species, and when the proliferation happened after that, a lot of the species that proliferated were in the bony fish family. So even though, I want to say, even though there's only 500 to 600 species of sharks, we see a lot of diversity in our sharks. So next slide. If I ask people to name a shark, a lot of you are going to name some of our more common ones. So of course, we have makos and whale sharks, we have sand tigers and hammerheads, we have tigers and bulls, of course great whites. And we think of those are our bigger sharks. Of those 500 to 600 species, most, probably 95% of them, never get bigger than about 4 feet long. And many of them live in the deep ocean that you'll never see. So again, that diversity is broad, but the numbers of species is relatively low. And when I talk about diversity, I just don't talk about diversity of their size and their shape. I could literally sit here for 2 days, and I enjoy it, talking about the diversity of shark reproduction. It is one of the most fascinating things in the world, because sharks actually have internal fertilization. So bony fish do not. Bony fish have external fertilization. Shark skates and rays have internal fertilization. But not all shark skates and rays give birth to live young. So some of them lay eggs. So you might see like a mermaid's purse. A mermaid's purse is usually a skate or some sort of ray egg case. So that's a species that lays eggs. There's a lot of species that give birth to live young. And where we see a tremendous amount of diversity is how they provide nutrition to the embryos. So in mammals like us, there's a placenta, right? And the mother provides nutrients through an umbilical cord. In shark skates and rays, the ones that give birth to live young, there's about 10 or 12 different ways that they provide nutrients to their embryos, depending on what species you're talking about. And I'll briefly mention the weirdest one, and that's actually this species right here, the sand tiger, which many of you have seen in aquariums. Sand tigers practice what's called adelphophagy. So what does adelphophagy mean? I'm from Philadelphia. Philadelphia's nickname is the city of brotherly love, right? And that's because literally Philadelphia means brotherly love. P-H-I-L, Phil is love. Adelph is the Greek word for brother. So if I say adelphophagy, first part's brother. What does phagy mean? Phagy means eat. So the embryos in a sand tiger shark begin growing inside the mother's uterus. Whichever embryo grows the fastest eats its siblings inside the womb. So she actually will provide some unfertilized eggs for the embryos to eat, and then whatever embryo reaches the biggest size and gets teeth quickest actually consumes its brothers and sisters in the womb. Now that's an extreme case, but it gives you an idea of some of the diversity that we see in reproduction. Okay, so why do we care about sharks? For many, many years, sharks were thought of as kind of these killer robot things. Solitary automatons just out there swimming in the ocean trying to eat everything they could. And of course, Jaws was a part of that. And Peter Benchley came to regret writing the novel Jaws because of the kind of negative connotation it gave to sharks. But we still even see it today with Sharknado and Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark. But I will say that viewpoint has certainly changed over the years. And I need to make sure I give Lucas enough time. Sharks are not stupid. Sharks are actually relatively smart. My PhD advisor actually studied shark cognition back in like the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And I remember asking him, I said, how smart is a shark? And he said he would equate it to roughly the kind of intelligence of your average house cat. So it's not like they're like orca smart or dolphin smart, but they definitely have intelligence. They learn quite quickly and they retain that information as well. Next slide. So why else should we care about them? Sharks are kind of the lions of the ocean. They generally sit near the top of the food chain, so they provide balance to everything below them. If you remove sharks from an ecosystem, a lot of times it destabilizes the food web. They play a very important role in controlling the populations below them, just like the lions in the Serengeti or the wolves in Yellowstone. We find sharks in all oceans and all marine ecosystems, including some freshwater ones as well. Next slide. Now, why should we care about them? They are important to our oceans, and we lose a lot of them. This number, which when I first read it, I actually thought was an exaggeration, is not. Some of my colleagues who study population modeling of shark skates and rays estimate that 90 to 100 million sharks are taken from the ocean every year. That's a large, large number. I will say, here in the United States, we do a pretty good job of managing our shark populations. Could always do a better job, but overall, the United States does a pretty good job of sustainably managing our shark fisheries. But it is very important to manage them to maintain that balance in the ecosystem. So how do we manage them? Similar to the old real estate adage, location, location, location. When it comes to managing these species, it's all about information, information, information. And it's quite difficult to glean this information because these sharks live underwater. It's hard to catch them. It's hard to estimate how many of them are there. But really, the only way to do that is with these big comprehensive studies like OCEARCH does. Next slide. So what do we do? I.e. JU students, me, and some of working with OCEARCH. I'm an ecologist, so I study the general ecology and life history of these animals. So we look at things like migration and movements, what habitat do they use, What is their diet? What is their population? Ultimately, what the questions that I try to answer and my students try to answer is what is there, when is it there, why is it there? And I'm going to be honest, it goes all the way back to when I was a little kid in New Jersey catching turtles out of the streams. I remember thinking to myself, why can I catch a painted turtle in this stream but not this one? Why can I catch a stink pot in this stream and not this one? Fast forward 40 years later and I'm still asking the same questions, just in different systems. What is there, when is it there, and ultimately why is it there? Because that is information that is important for managing these species. So what's there, why is it there, and then the thing I've added more recently is how are we affecting it? Because we affect literally everything that's out there. So we not only need to know the what, the when, and the why, but how are we impacting them? Next slide. So with me and my students, we do a lot of local research here in Northeast Florida in what we call inshore and nearshore species. And that's everything from tracking these animals to figure out where they go and when, to taking blood and muscle samples to examine their diet. We use those blood and muscle samples to look at contaminants in their blood and tissues. We do a number of studies related to the health of these animals, of which some of those contaminants are one of those. And the common species that we look at kind of inshore and nearshore are things like sandbar sharks, lemons, black tips, sandbars, bonnet heads. Some are your more smaller species. And then of course we also work quite a bit with OCEARCH throughout the western North Atlantic looking at the great whites. Next slide. So this is just some of the local inshore and nearshore work that we do. This is actually a video from Cape Canaveral at the actual beach where they do the launches. It is a huge winter nursery for lemon sharks. With some of the aerial photography we have during the winter time, we estimate that there might be up to 2,000 little lemon sharks using literally the beach right there at the Space Center as a winter nursery. So I took that video. I'm basically standing on dry land. These sharks come in really close to shore, but of course the beach is a closed beach. But we've been doing a lot of work down there, all the way up to Georgia and kind of everywhere in between. And these are just a couple of the students that have done that work in the past few years. OCEARCH at Jacksonville University. So as I mentioned, that partnership began in 2017. I participated in most of the expeditions over the past, I guess, 6 to 7 years. We try to get JU students out at least some of the time. It's quite easy when the ship is fishing here in the southeastern U.S. It's a little more difficult when the ship is fishing up off of Nova Scotia. But we do still get students up onto the ship when the ship's up in Nova Scotia as well. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the work with OCEARCH is these big collaborative teams. And that's what I've loved the most about working with OCEARCH is we go out and OCEARCH has 25 different research projects going on with these white sharks. And there's probably 75 to 100 different researchers that are utilizing the data that's being collected. The reason why you do that, it's the most efficient way to study these animals. If I just went out, because I study migration and movements, if I went out and caught a white shark and slapped the tag on it and let it go, and then Lucas studies white sharks, but he needs their blood, and he goes and catches one and takes its blood and lets it go, that's not very efficient. If we work together, I could put tags on both, he could get blood samples from both. And that's really what the power of OCEARCH is. It allows for these big collaborative teams to work together to accelerate the knowledge that we're getting. This is just some of the migration and movement data that we've been able to show. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this. This is female white sharks. This is male white sharks. This is the winter time where you see these white sharks pretty much from North Carolina to the Gulf of Mexico. And then this is the summertime where you see them pretty much from Cape Cod up to Nova Scotia because these sharks are snowbirds. They make this big migration every year. Next slide. Now the one thing that I'm going to finish with is one thing that I always tell students. Being a marine scientist is fun. You get days like this where it's glassy calm and you got 30 sharks out on the back of the boat. You got days where you're swimming a tiger shark after you caught it on a long line. Next slide. But then for every day that you have, like the previous slide, you got a lot of days or nights like this, where you're in waist-deep mud that stinks to high heaven, or you're spending an entire day out in the hot sun fixing a net that you used the day before. And that's really, that I think is important for students to learn, that what you see on Discovery Channel is fun and we love doing it, but there's a lot of work that goes into this as well. And I probably took up too much time, but we try to get involved as much as we can and work with as many organizations as possible. You can skip the next slide because we're going to do questions with me. And then I will turn it over to the director of the Sea Turtle program at Jacksonville University, Lucas Meers.
Thanks, boss. He doesn't like me calling him my boss. He's technically my boss. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Hi, Susie. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about the new Sea Turtle program at Jacksonville University. I'm also the permit holder for Michler's Landing Turtle Patrol down in Ponte Vedra, and I'm also on the permit for Beach's Sea Turtle Patrol here in Atlantic Neptune and Jacksonville Beach. So my life revolves around sea turtles. You might have to flip through. Awesome. So my experience is in wildlife conservation. I've been working in wildlife conservation for about 15 years. I graduated from Jacksonville University with a degree in marine science, and I have been volunteering with Michler's Landing Turtle Patrol ever since then. And so I just wrapped up my 15th year on Sea Turtle Patrol down in Ponte Vedra Beach. But last year I started talking about wanting to do sea turtles full time, and we secured funding to cover my salary and bring a sea turtle program to Jacksonville University. And so through this partnership with Michler's Landing Turtle Patrol and Jacksonville University, we launched the sea turtle program at Jacksonville University to provide learning opportunities, experiential learning opportunities for students through sea turtle work. Several objectives of this program are, one, to get students exposed in field data collection. Just like collecting data on sharks, we have students out on our patrol collecting data on nesting sea turtles in Ponte Vedra. Knowledge retention. We really want students to retain a lot of the things that they're learning. So there's 3 different ways to retain knowledge on learning. It's visual, audio, and kinetic, hands-on activities. And so when they hear it, see it, and they do it, they have a higher chance of retaining that knowledge and being out on the beach collecting data on sea turtle nests and sea turtles themselves, help them retain that knowledge. We really want them to understand critical thinking skills. How do they make these connections? What's going on in Jacksonville Beach versus what's going on in Ponte Vedra Beach? Are there differences? What's going on down in Guana, in the GTM NER, that is an unrenourished beach? Are there differences in nesting trends down there than there are in Ponte Vedra Beach and Jacksonville Beach, where we have a lot of urbanized activity? Communication and public speaking skills. I think this is a key skill for scientists to learn. So many scientists that I've worked with are nervous. They struggle to speak to people, but in wildlife conservation, you have to be able to talk about your work in a fashion that non-scientists can understand. You have to be able to distill your message down so any audience can understand what you're actually doing, and you need to be able to talk about your work. A lot of wildlife conservation comes with fundraising. You have to learn how to raise money for your program, not necessarily through grants. And so I think, particularly nowadays, we have to diversify our funding mechanisms through grants, through individual donations, through foundations, to be able to support our work and understand what's going on with wildlife conservation, and to be able to protect the animals that we love so dearly. Community relationships. This is something that I really pride myself on. Down in Ponte Vedra, we're a walking patrol. We exclusively walk. And I think when you're walking on the beach, you're almost forced to say hello to people. And I'm a huge advocate of the power of hello. It's a fantastic way to make new connections, make new friends, and really talk about what you're actually doing. Why are you wearing a Sea Turtle Patrol shirt? And that opens up those conversations, and those are unplanned education opportunities that not only educate our community and the beachfront homeowners and the tourists that are visiting our beaches, but also it helps students practice their public speaking skills to be able to have these types of conversations with strangers, which is not that common nowadays because we're all wrapped up in our phones. These strategies also make them competitive in the conservation field because we're learning the hard skills. We're collecting data, we're analyzing the data, but it's the soft skills, the people skills, the conversations with people, and those relationships with our community members that make them much more competitive in the scientific field. If you're able to fundraise for your program and your research, you have a huge competitive advantage in the field of conservation. And then, last but not least, but probably one of the most important, is become caring members of society, caring about the environment and the world around us. What can we do to help? Often, what's the impact? Bryan talked about the human impact of sharks. Humans also have impacts on turtles, whether or not they know it. And if we're able to communicate with these stressors and these threats with sea turtles, we can get people to start changing their behaviors and changing their attitudes towards sea turtles. So I'm going to go through a few different projects, collaborative works that we're working on with other universities and other organizations, and then I'm going to talk about some of the research and data collection that are future projects that we have some JU students that are going to work on. There's two main fields or two main pillars for the sea turtle program right now. The first is research and data collection, and then the second is going to be community engagement and awareness. So first, this is kind of the initial why we started the sea turtle program, and what we've been doing, what I've been doing for the past 15 years, is nest marking and monitoring. So we monitor 4.5 miles of beach down in Ponte Vedra. So Meikler's Landing is kind of our halfway point. And we monitor all the way up from Sawgrass Beach Club as our northern boundary, all the way south to the northern boundary of Guana. And so here in Jax Beach, you have Beach's Sea Turtle Patrol, which monitors Atlantic, Neptune, and Jacksonville Beach, which is about 7.5 miles. Then you have another stretch, a different turtle patrol, Ponte Vedra Sea Turtle Patrol, which monitors 4 miles of the northern St. Johns County. And then you have Meikler's Landing Turtle Patrol, which is just south of that, in between Ponte Vedra and Guana. And so we're out 200 days per year, April 15th through October 31st, collecting data on any new nest. We're marking any new nests, and we're monitoring any existing nests that we previously marked. Anytime a nest is laid by a sea turtle at night, our team comes by early morning before sunrise, the morning after, and we mark that nest, and we check every single nest every single day during about the 2-month duration of its incubation period until it hatches. Then we go in and we will conduct a nest evaluation, officially called a nest productivity assessment, but a nest evaluation where we dig up the contents of the nest to determine the success rate of the nest. How many babies hatched versus how many didn't hatch. It's not only important to know how many nests we have on the beach, but it's important to know how successful each one of those nests are. Each nest can have an average of 115 to 135 eggs per clutch of eggs per nest. That varies by species, but we need to know the success rate of each one of those nests. And occasionally, we do find sea turtle hatchlings in the nest. We call these straggler hatchlings, and we will, depending on their health and the conditions at the time, we will release them on site, and then we provide opportunities for the public to come watch us release those hatchlings too. So one of the studies that we're collaborating on is a new study that was launched this year, and Beach's Sea Turtle Patrol is also participating in this study, is breeding sex ratio. How many males are there in the population? When baby sea turtles hatch, they go out immediately to the water. They crawl to the water, and it's only the females, once they reach sexual maturity after about 17 to 35 years, the females will come back to nest on the beach, so they come back out of the water. We have a lot of knowledge about female sea turtles, but we really don't know anything about adult male sea turtles, because once, as hatchlings, when they go to the water, they do not return back to land. They live their entire lives in the water, so it's very difficult to get an understanding of what's going on with male sea turtles. And so there was a study done in South Florida where they sexed but a significant number of hatchling sea turtles, and 99% of them were female. And so if there's anything on the sea turtle talk that you remember today. It's hot chicks, cool dudes. The hotter the temperature that the nest incubates at, the more females the nest will produce. The cooler the temperatures, the more males the nest will produce. And so because of climate change and warming ambient temperature, we're concerned that there's not going to be enough males long-term in the sea turtle population to produce enough babies, or we're afraid of a genetic bottleneck of inbreeding. And so what we've done with this study is we've expanded it statewide. So we're one of the beaches that's participating in this study. Atlantic Neptune and Jacksonville Beach is participating in this study. And a tiny biology lesson is when sperm are headed toward the egg, once one sperm penetrates the membrane of the egg, that egg releases a type of spermicide that kills the rest of the sperm around the egg. And so that egg is only fertilized by one sperm. But all of that sperm is essentially trapped in a membrane. And because female sea turtles can mate with multiple males, each clutch of eggs can have multiple fathers. And so if you have multiple different males' sperm competing for this egg, when that egg releases that spermicide and kills the sperm, that dead sperm, or that loser sperm is what we call it, is trapped in this membrane. And what we can do is extract that DNA from that sperm trapped in that membrane to identify how many sperm from males have tried to fertilize that egg, giving us a minimum number of males that have mated with that female, and then a minimum number of males that are in the population offshore. So we're working to get a baseline number of loggerhead, specifically loggerhead sea turtle males, off the coast of Florida. And this study's done around the entire state. We're also collaborating on another study, genetic markers for fibropapillomatosis. Has anyone heard of the term eDNA? Turtle people don't talk. Okay, eDNA is short for environmental DNA. So every time we're moving through our environment, you're shedding your hair, you're dropping hair, your skin cells, you're leaving little bits of your DNA behind. Well, when a 250, 300-pound sea turtle comes up onto the shore, she's scraping her body on the sand, leaving bits of DNA behind. And we can take those sand samples and look to see if there are any genetic markers for fibropapillomatosis. So fibropapillomatosis is, it's herpes for turtles, basically. And so they get these large cauliflower-like tumors, particularly in green sea turtles, that can be debilitating for the sea turtle. It weakens their immune system. The tumors become trapped in fishing line and nets, and they can ultimately die from entanglement. And so we really don't know what the cause of this disease is. There's some thought that it is environmental and that there's some relation to pollution. But what we're doing with this collaborative study with University of Florida is trying to determine are some species or some individual sea turtles genetically predispositioned to get this disease? Are they more likely to receive this disease based on these environmental factors? And then some of the new studies that we're launching with some JU students are site fidelity of juvenile green sea turtles in Duval County marinas. So this species are primarily vegetarians when they're juveniles and adults. And so they're eating the seagrasses, they're eating the algae off the docks and marinas. And so this study is currently being done in St. Augustine at a couple of marinas, and one of our JU master's students is wanting to replicate this study in a few Duval County marinas around Mayport that have seen juvenile sea turtles, green sea turtles. Are they moving from marina to marina? Are they exclusively staying in marinas? The way that we can do this is by taking photos of their scale patterns on their face, because their scale patterns on their face are unique to each individual. And so we can identify individual juvenile green sea turtles and their site fidelity. Are they just hanging out in this one marina, or are they going from marina to marina? And then another study that a JU student is about to start is beach renourishment impacts on sea turtle nests in St. Johns County specifically. I'm sure you're all familiar with all the beach renourishment projects that occurred last year in 2024. It affected a lot of us, and we are seeing those effects on sea turtle nests after that, during that beach renourishment, and then we're seeing the effects after that in our post-monitoring years this past year, and then we're doing post-monitoring again next year. So we have a student that's actually looking at the effects of beach renourishment in St. Johns County, particularly in the beaches that were renourished in Ponte Vedra and comparing them to the non-renourished beaches in Guana. And the second pillar is community outreach and engagement. And this is something that I'm kind of really proud of with our patrol and what we've been doing in getting students involved. We're the only turtle patrol in Northeast Florida that's permitted by Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission to invite the community to our public nest evaluations. We have a little bit of an advantage because we only have one public access, so it helps control our numbers a little bit. You can tell that they're still very popular. This was our last public evaluation of the season just a couple of weeks ago. We had a little over 200 people attend. I gave less than a 24-hour notice on a Facebook event, and that's how many people came out to it. And they walked about a half a mile south of Michelers to come to this. But this is where we have a captive audience, where we can really talk to them about sea turtle biology and what they can do to help protect sea turtles. They're primarily coming for the chance, not even a guarantee, a chance to see a sea turtle hatchling that may or may not be remaining in the nest when we dig up the contents. But because I have a captive audience, I use that as an opportunity to educate our community on what they can do to help protect sea turtles. And they're free to attend. We also are getting JU students out and about in classrooms. So we have outreach programs where they take a sea turtle education trunk to primarily we focus on public school classrooms. These are free of charge. If there's any teachers in here, we provide a free sea turtle education to public school children, primarily grades 3 through 5, but we can adapt K through 12. Where JU students, these are master's students that are going out into these public school systems, talking about sea turtles, giving them a biology lesson and what they can do to help protect sea turtles. This is a hands-on activity where they get a presentation and then they do get a model turtle where they have to basically take everything that they learned in the short presentation and apply it to their rescued turtle. And so they have to take measurements just like a real scientist, they have to take weights of the turtle just like a real scientist, and they have to do external observations. You can see this turtle has a piece of plastic bag sticking out of its mouth. But they take what they learn in this presentation and they apply it to this hands-on activity to determine if the turtle needs to go to rehab or if it's healthy enough to be released. So not only are these school children getting free access to sea turtle education, but the JU students are learning how to present to different audiences. Speaking to a group of kindergartners is very different than speaking to a group of 12th graders. And so they are getting practice understanding different audiences and different terminology and different words to use when they're going out and educating these students. And these are paid positions for the JU students. We have master's students that we actually do pay them hourly to go out, and so there is a little bit of an incentive for them to continue learning. And we're compensating them for their time. Next. I do want to give one little pitch to come to our public nest evaluations. They will begin again in July 2026 because that's when our nests will start hatching. But they are free to attend. You can find them on our Facebook page, Michelers Landing Turtle Patrol, and we talk about sea turtle biology. You can potentially see a sea turtle hatchling in a controlled environment that's best for the sea turtle and for people. And I wanted to do a little bit of a pitch to steal some of the Jack's Beach people to come down to Ponte Vedra Beach to see our nest evaluations. And then I also want everyone to encourage everyone to support and follow any sea turtle organization. We all work very collaboratively. One thing that I really want to do with the sea turtle program outside of the students is really bring all of the sea turtle organizations together in Northeast Florida because we're doing a lot of the same work. We're repeating a lot of the same work. We're collecting a lot of the same data. And so bringing us together, both in a professional sense and a social sense, I think that will really help us collaborate a lot more and be a lot more impactful, not only for protecting sea turtles, but also getting our community involved. I think that's a key component, is the human dimensions of sea turtles. How can we best protect sea turtles? Everyone loves sea turtles. I don't know of a single person that doesn't love sea turtles. But a lot of people just don't know whether or not they're nesting, or they don't know how they can help sea turtles. And I think as a collective group of all of our turtle patrols working together, we can have a larger impact for sea turtle conservation. So, I have one more video. I just wanted to end with maybe push it one more time. Is it not gonna play? Oh, it's not gonna play. Oh, I had a video of a sea turtle hatchling crawling.
Oh. Okay.
Maybe we can play it.
Wait,
Oh, wait, yeah, there it
wait,
is.
wait.
There it is. Play. Push.
It says cannot play media.
Oh.
Dang it. Oh, that was a sea turtle hatchling I saw earlier this
Well,
year.
you can improvise, right?
I can improvise. That's right. It's a loggerhead, so it's alternating gait. And with that, I did want to give you, everyone, a huge thank you for attending this evening and supporting Beaches Watch and learning a little bit more about sharks, turtles, and OCEARCH. Oh my!
Thank you guys so much. So we'll open it up to questions from the audience, and we have our roving microphone, Ellen Glasser, so that way everyone can hear the questions. And if our panel will, or our speakers will come up here, so you can answer. Oh, is that working? Okay, that works. That works. So if you want to, wherever you feel comfortable standing. Yes.
You said female turtles mature 17 to 35 years. How long does a male turtle take to mature?
That's all turtle. Well, all loggerhead
Okay.
turtles, yes. I may have just misspoke when I said female turtles, but generally for loggerhead sea turtles, it's anywhere between 17 and 35 years, and that depends, is this working?
Yes.
17 to 35 years, and that depends on how many resources are available. Are they getting enough food? And so if they are getting enough food, they'll mature at that earlier 17 years, but if they are struggling to find food, then maybe it'll be closer to that 35-year mark. But it is females and males.
Question for Dr. Franks. So I love to swim in the ocean all summer. Okay. And you always hear there's half a dozen sharks out there when you're swimming. Is that true, or can you just not worry about it? Try not to worry about it.
I mean, you can almost be certain there are sharks somewhere around you, just because of, particularly in the summers, the numbers that are out there. But I think it's a good lesson. You don't need to worry about it. What I tell people is be aware, and so be cautious and aware, but don't be nervous or scared. And when I say cautious and aware, to give you an example, I'll go to the beach with my family every once in a while in the summer, and I'm sure you've all seen the big bait balls that go up and down the coast in the summer. You see just these big clouds in the water moving up and down the beach. And I'll watch people see those and decide to walk out into the middle of them or try to swim around them. And that's not being cautious and aware, because those bait balls usually or sometimes frequently have sharks around them trying to feed on those. You want to try to avoid those. So again, they are something that are in our water. Being cautious and aware is important, but I don't think you need to be scared or nervous simply because of the fact that you have sharks swimming around you in the water and you're not being bitten is a good lesson that for the wide majority of the time, these sharks don't want anything to do with us. To give you an example, when I lived in the Bahamas, one of our favorite things to do was go out and look for sharks. And if we saw them, we wanted to get in the water with them to take pictures of them. And 99.9% of the time, we would get in the water and they would just try and swim away, swim away, swim away. They are intelligent. Now again, there are bites that happen. Many times those are quote unquote mistakes, and that's why usually it's a bite and then a release, because again, sharks don't have hands and fingers to grab something and see, can I eat this? But they realize pretty quickly, this isn't my normal prey. And I probably went off a little bit on a tangent, but I guess my lesson is be cautious and aware, but don't necessarily be scared. But they are out there. Yeah, absolutely.
It's more like catch and release.
Other questions? I have one.
Ellen?
Yes.
So as a follow-on, I used to know a Navy guy who said that they would practice search and rescue with the helicopters going over the beach waters, and he said that he would see a line of shrimp boats, and he always noticed sharks hanging around at that line. So it might be something that people could look out for, the shrimp boats, and say, okay, maybe now's not the time to be out there because they're active.
Absolutely. And the sharks learn very quickly what areas to quote unquote hunt in and what boats to follow. We had a site again in the Bahamas where we did a reef shark snorkel, where we would actually feed these Caribbean reef sharks at the same site all the time. And we had been doing it for so long that any boat that turned up in that area, the boat engines were enough to bring the sharks in, because they knew that there was likely food coming. And the shrimp boats are very similar to that. They learn pretty quickly that there might be some scraps for them to eat coming off of these boats.
Others?
I have a sea turtle question.
Yes.
I was just like thinking in my head, back when they were doing the beach renourishment, I have some friends on Sea Turtle Patrol, and they were moving nests to protect them, like up to Hannah Park, I think she said. And then I was wondering, so if when sea turtles, the mother comes and lays the eggs basically on a similar beach, you know, or is that a myth? The same area that she hatched from, if the mother laid the eggs, say in Neptune Beach, and then they moved that nest up to Atlantic Beach to protect it, where did those babies return? Did they return to where their mother, like, is it genetically in there, or do they return, like, their little internal GPS will bring them back to, like, Hannah Park?
It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but yet generally it is understood that sea turtles generally come back to the same beach to nest year after year. But sea turtles do not understand political boundaries. I would hope they don't. I mean, they would be very intelligent if they do. But what we participated in a study for several years up until last year that was looking at nest site fidelity of females. And we took one sacrificial egg from every single loggerhead nest that was laid. And that was a sacrificial egg, but the information that we gained from that supported several different studies, one of which was looking at the mitochondrial DNA of nesting females. For those non-biologists, mitochondrial DNA is passed down exclusively through the maternal line. So all of us have our mother's mitochondrial DNA. We do not get the mitochondrial DNA from our fathers. It's the same thing with sea turtles. And so that we can understand what specific female laid which specific nest. And what we learned through this study is those younger females that just reached sexual maturity at 17 years, they had a much wider range of where their nests were, some upwards of 500 miles. We did have a few instances in 2019 where there was a female nesting loggerhead that nested down in Guana. Then she nested for her second time that summer up in North Carolina, and then she came back down and nested in Guana. And so she was going back and forth, because one female sea turtle can lay multiple nests in a season, and so she was going back and forth between those spaces. What we also learned through that study is that the older females tended to develop a much stronger preference or a much stronger natal beach connection, where there were some older females that had been part of this study since the beginning that were laying all of their nests within a 1 mile stretch. So to answer your question, I don't think there was going to be much of a difference between Jack's Beach versus Atlantic Beach. I think it's all generally similar. And to be honest with our permitting restrictions with moving nests, we can only move them a certain distance away from where they were originally laid to maintain that potential connection to that natal beach. Yeah, I doubt it's the same exact female, but I can't say that for sure unless we do some genetic testing on that. But
Would be just a whole smattering of females that lay one last summer she laid in Palm Beach, and it's just like...
Yeah, it varies a little bit, and it can vary for 20, 30, 50 miles. But those much older females, they do tend to hone in on a very specific stretch of beach. I mean, that could be an older female.
I've just been looking to see it hatch, which is really exciting. Hi, I was wondering if Jacksonville University has any events where members of the community can come out and see like a day in the life, or maybe see what you're doing research on, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the answer is we did in the past. It was discontinued, but we are talking about restarting it actually in 2026. So the event used to be called the Science on the St. John's, and that's exactly what it was. The faculty and the students would kind of have little demonstrations or little setups where they could explain the research that they're doing, and then the members of the public could participate in that. Whether it was, pulling a plankton net and then identifying the plankton under the microscopes, or whether it was going out and doing a dolphin survey. So yes, the answer to your question is we discontinued it, but stay tuned because there is talk about restarting it in 2026.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question. I know that the Mayport Waterfront Partnership is doing an event next week with Scenic Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But my question is, what is going on at Mayport related to OCEARCH? Can you just give us a quick summary of where we are?
Let's
and what
see,
we
do
can
we
expect to see?
have another hour? Yeah, the simple answer to that is things are ongoing. You probably saw in the papers, we did receive money from the state for a facility and a vessel. The vessel is in progress. So the vessel is being designed. This is actually a research catamaran that was specifically designed by OCEARCH's fishing captain to handle large marine animals, sharks, small marine mammals, those sorts of things. That vessel is in progress right now. The actual facility in Mayport, we're in a little bit, it's slow going. Part of it is we currently do not have the full amount that would be needed to construct that facility. You may have also heard in last year's state budget, our appropriation wasn't completely vetoed out, but was reduced very, very significantly, 95% of what the appropriation was, which did, was a bit of a setback. So there is an event out at the Gulliford Center out at Mayport next week, talking about the future of Mayport Village, and Chris Fisher will be one of the panelists in that panel discussion talking about that. So things still are in progress, it's just a little slow going right now.
One more
Any other
question?
questions? One more? Just quickly, do you have any numbers as far as the success rate of the nests that did hatch in your...
I have our success rate in Ponte Vedra. I don't know if Jen has hers in beaches off the top of her head. So out of our... I'll just yell. So out of our 104 nests that we had in our 4.5-mile stretch of beach, we had about a 76% hatch success rate, which is actually quite low for us. We generally average about 82 to 85% success rate in Ponte Vedra. I don't know if that has to do with the renourishment beach, but that's what we have a student that's going to be looking at those numbers. What I do have a suspicion on is we had a lot of nor'easters and really, really high king tides that came through this year, particularly Hurricane Erin in early August, in the very beginning of August. Despite Hurricane Erin being far offshore, the tides did coincide with her passing by Northeast Florida, and a lot of our nests were washed out. Whether or not that had to do with the renourishment, some of the nests may have been laid closer to the water line. There's some theories with that, but we have a student that's looking at that. But this year's hatch success rate was actually quite low, much lower than much lower than what we normally have, which is normally 82 to 85%.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Oh, I turned it off.
Oh, you did.
I just
Turn
put
it
that.
off? Oh, okay. Hello. Somehow you turn the volume. Okay. Thank you guys. This was so informative, and hopefully it will make us much more aware of what's going on with our friends under the sea, as well as you know, above the water too. So let's give a big round of applause. And we look forward to hearing greater things with OCEARCH and JU and the Marine Institute. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Oh, sorry, I'm walking.